a little girl who sleeps only an hour and a half a night, a baby born with two faces, or a Cyclops baby. Get comfortable. Here are the 10 most unusual babies that really exist. Here we go. In the village of Sunpora, located 40 kilometers east of New Delhi, a little girl was born on March 11, 2008. But the little Lolly was born with a rather particular physique. Indeed, she was born with a serious malformation that manifested itself in a craniofacial duplication. The little girl had only one head, only one pair of ears, but she had two faces, with two noses, two pairs of lips and two pairs of eyes. Lolly could drink her milk with her two mouths and open or close her four eyes at the same time. An exceptional phenomenon. Despite her malformation, Lolly was like any other baby. The craniofacial duplication frequently leads to health complications, but the newborn seemed to lead a normal life and did not suffer from any pain or respiratory difficulties. Even if Lolly might suffer psychologically from her difference when she grows up, she is still a little girl like the others. She could make her difference a strength. Besides, the little girl with two faces became in a few weeks of life a real star in her village. So much so, that at her birth, she was considered as the reincarnation of a Hindu goddess, something that does not happen to all babies. Robin Odette and Kirk Hisco are from Refrew, Ontario and are the proud parents of little Ever Hisco. They live a simple, happy life like any ordinary family. But when Robin and Kirk get ready for bed at night, they know it's going to be an eventful night. Robin and Kirk hardly sleep all night because of their baby. The little Ever is not a child like the others. She suffers from a rare disease named Angelman. This pathology is the result of a genetic modification on the chromosome 15 of the brain. It manifests itself, among other things, by the fact that the patient only needs a few hours of sleep per night. You can imagine the suffering of the parents. And that's not all, as at 3 years old, the child is still too small to stay awake alone at night. One of them must absolutely stay awake with her. The parents are thus obliged to sleep in turn to be able to recover, and that is repeated every night, a true ordeal. Today the couple has started to get used to this new way of life, although the 3-year-old still does not sleep more than 4 hours a day. Today, the couple receives a lot of support from people who know their story, which helps them a lot to bear their problem. This little girl is called Nina. She is the daughter of Griem Warnell and Aga. The three of them lived in Poland and led a seemingly ordinary life. But 2 weeks after her birth, Nina suddenly stopped eating and gaining weight. So at 10 weeks of age she was taken to the hospital. It was there that she was diagnosed with a rare disease, bubble baby syndrome. Nina was born without an immune system. A disease that affects 1 in several 100,000 babies, most of whom, if left untreated, die within a year of birth. Nina's disorder is due to a defective gene in her enzyme adenosine deaminase. The role of adenosine deaminase is to destroy the toxic molecule in white blood cells, and without it, the toxins build up and kill the cells that fight the bacteria. Nina's case was rare. A simple kiss or a simple cold could kill her. No one would go near her, not even her parents, for fear that someone would pass on a virus or bacteria that her body could not fight. Fortunately for Nina, after much research, her parents heard about Professor Bobby Gaspar, an immunology expert who works at GOSH. He suggested a gene therapy that involves harvesting bone marrow cells that are given a functional version of the ADA gene and then injected back into the patient. Their alternative would have been to undergo a bone marrow transplant, a complex and risky operation that was likely to result in Nina's death. In April 2013, the little girl was finally able to receive her therapeutic treatment and spent several months in a sterile room before her condition improved. Today, Nina and her family have returned to Poland after moving to England for treatment. But they still go once a year to GOSH in England for routine checkups. The little girl goes to school, runs, falls, wallows and plays, just as a child of her age would. In Egypt, in the private hospital of the city of El Senbelawyne, a woman gave birth to a baby boy. But the little boy was not quite normal. Her child was born with only one eye in the middle of his forehead, a rare and impressive malformation called cyclopia. The abnormality that the newborn had was due to a bad development of the embryonic structure that was supposed to become the brain. The latter, which should normally separate into two parts, remained as it was, which led to the creation of a single orbital cavity instead of two cavities, and therefore of a single larger eye located in the center of the forehead. Cyclopia may be caused by a genetic factor, as well as being the result of the mother's exposure to a combination of treatments or radiation during pregnancy, which would have disrupted the development of her fetus. The photo of the baby with only one eye and no nose was published by the media and disturbed many internet users. Another pain that the poor mother endured by seeing the photo of her baby making the rounds of the web. Worse than that, she had to face the worst pain, that of saying goodbye to her baby since it died a few days later. Indeed, babies born with such malformations have a very low chance of survival. In spite of an aftertaste of unfinished business, the arrival of this child will have made her stronger. The Fenner couple lives in the United States and their greatest desire was to have a child. So they gave birth to a little Luna. Unfortunately, Luna was born with a giant, congenital melanocytic nevus. This disease manifested itself in a large black spot that covered a good part of her face. It is actually a benign tumor, and the reason it was called giant is because in Luna's case, the black spot covered more than 10 centimeters of her face. Luna's parents had to fight for their daughter's return to a normal life. They opened an online fundraising campaign to collect donations so that little Luna could undergo surgery and thus regain a more or less ordinary appearance. Luna will have to undergo a total of 8 operations, and for this, the parents have taken her to Russia, where a Russian surgeon lives who had a revolutionary treatment for the little girl. A godsend for the parents, since shortly after Luna's birth, the young couple, still new to parenthood, had to face mocking looks and malicious criticism. Many said that their daughter looked like a monster, others were afraid of her and kept away from her thinking that she had a contagious disease. Today, the two parents have managed to have their little Luna operated on. The black spot has diminished considerably, but there are still a few more operations to do before she gets her face back to normal. They are happy and proud to see their daughter happy and fulfilled despite her particularity. And even if the spot disappears with the operations, if there is one thing that will not disappear no matter what the results are, it is the love they have for her. Paisley Morrison Johnson was born in South Dakota, USA. But when she was born, Paisley had a rare birth defect. She suffered from Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, a disease that causes the overgrowth of certain organs, including the tongue. Thus, little Paisley was born with a tongue so large that she was unable to breathe on her own. Only operations could free her from this handicap. Paisley had to undergo a first operation to shrink her tongue, but it turned out to be a real failure because the muscle kept growing and hanging out of her mouth. And to be able to feed himself, the baby had to be fed by a gastric tube until he was 6 months old. Paisley then underwent a second surgery during which she had approximately 15 centimeters of muscle removed. Unfortunately, this operation is not the end of her worries, as in the future, Paisley could see abnormal growths in other parts of her body, still due to Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome. For now, at least the little girl has been able to smile again. She is breathing and eating normally, and even better, she is already saying her first words. In Alabama, USA, a little boy was born with the name Timothy Eli Thompson. But the newborn was not a child like the others. He suffered from a congenital malformation called Aurinie, which had not been detected during the ultrasound checkups that the mother underwent during her pregnancy. As a result, little Timothy was born without his nose. In addition to breathing difficulties, Timothy was also deprived of his olfactory system and his palate was also incomplete, in addition to the positioning of his brain which was lower than normal. These were serious complications that a simple plastic surgery could not solve. The young Timothy Eli first had to undergo a tracheotomy so that he could regain the ease of breathing, and will later have to undergo another surgery for the reconstruction of his nasal cavity. An operation that turns out to be quite complex and therefore can only be considered at the end of his childhood. But in spite of his malformation, little Timothy Eli remains, like all babies, an adorable little fellow full of life. In 2017, in Bihar, a state in northeast India, a 28-year-old woman was expecting a child. She was happy and hopeful because the arrival of her child was going to be a new and joyful stage in her life. On the day she wanted to give birth, she went to the government hospital in Patna district. But the young mother, who was eager to meet her child, was devastated when she heard the shocking news of the genetic disease with which her baby was born. The baby looked like a strange creature rather than a human being because of the disease called harlequin ichthyosis. The latter is a very rare and serious genetic disease that mainly affects the skin, making it thicker and harder. Affected babies usually have their bodies encased in a kind of armor of dense white skin patches, separated by deep crevices that can crack and alter facial features, denaturing them and depriving them of any human appearance. Added to this, a series of other complications such as skin tightening around the eyes and mouth, forcing the eyelids and lips to turn over and revealing red linings. The chest and abdomen may be severely constricted by the tightness of the skin, making breathing difficult. The skull and face may become deformed. The nose may be absent. The ears may be missing or welded to the head by the skin. The joints lack movement. The fingers may be incomplete. Worse, the babies may be at high risk of dehydration and become extremely sensitive to temperature changes due to their hard skin. Not to mention the ordinary complications that occur with premature delivery, since these babies are all born prematurely. The mother said she was devastated by the delivery. She was ready to give her baby a lot of love, but refused to even hold and breastfeed him. She said that this birth was a curse, especially since when the news spread in the district of Patna, people shocked by the arrival of such a strange baby, nicknamed it, the demon baby, which only added to her pain. Let's hope that with time, this mother's heart will soften and she will learn to love her little one despite his difference, because she remains after all a mother, and a mother loves unconditionally. So what do you think of these 10 unusual babies? Have you ever had the opportunity to see a baby like no other? Tell us about it in the comments. And by the way, if you like this video, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive all the notifications and not miss anything of our next contents.